Okay, guys, I'm back. So we started yesterday with the interview that Sethikus Boza of Black Earth Productions did of me a couple days ago. And as is my wont, I got very caught up in myself and I answered a bunch of questions. So we only got about 40 minutes. I think it's about a 2-hour interview. So we only got about 40 minutes in yesterday, so we'll see. I don't make any promises. We might get through it all today, we might not. But we'll take it from there. So again, if you're watching this after it's been archived, then I would recommend going back to the part 1 of this, whatever it is I called this, Awakening the Ancient DNA Codes, part 1. And then come back and watch this part 2. If you're watching it live, well, then there you go. You'll just have to watch it live. So I'm going to give it, I'll talk a little bit while I let people come on, and they may have some questions. And then we'll get into, I'll play the interview between me and Sethikus. And again, my thanks to Sethikus for asking to interview me and wanting to team up, and I've really enjoyed what little I've gotten to know of him so far, and most importantly, I've really enjoyed how empowering he is in his understanding. So you know, and at some point I plan on interviewing him and learning more about him and sharing that with you guys here on this channel. So okay, so I guess, you know, I want to rant and rave a little bit about some stuff before we get into this. Yesterday, I was really on a roll, and I started going off about the importance of the feminine, the power of the feminine, and I used the word patriarchy, and that pushed some people's buttons, and I got a couple of nasty messages from some guys who didn't like that. You know, and I don't remember the exact words, but all I caught in it, because, you know, when people are ranting and they're just, you know, everything's in all caps and they're pissed off at you about something, you know, you kind of just look for the important information, if you even want to look at it at all. And so what he didn't like that I used the word patriarchy, and he didn't like that according to him, he said, you know, sarcastically, yeah, it's all men's fault. And I just want to say, at what point did I ever say it was men's fault? I never said that. I never said it was men's fault or women's fault. I never said anything about that. So, you know, this is the thing about projection. Everything is projection, literally, meaning we project our entire universe based on what's going on inside of us. So that means if you feel guilty, you know, and remember, guilt is anger. There's 2 ways to handle guilt. There's where you take it on and you make yourself a martyr and you push yourself down. Another way to handle guilt is to get angry at the people you think are blaming you or overpowering you. So if you're angry at women, if you think women have done it to you, if you think women are disempowering you, it's because you inside yourself feel that it's that you are disempowering yourself, and you're projecting it out. What we do is, let me explain to you what projection is all about. We project out into our environment things that can justify the feelings that we want to create within ourselves. So whatever victim mentality you have, whether it's you think that men are doing it to you, or women are doing it to you, or the government, or aliens, or archons, whoever it is you think is doing it to you, you have created them and projected them and put them into your environment so that you can justify to yourself what you feel. So if some guys out there, and the MGTOW guys, the men go their own way, I snicker at that, because it's just, listen guys, I have to tell you, the rest of us who look at you walking around talking about how women are disempowering you every chance that they get, we see how weak you really are. You're not fooling anybody. We see it. It's funny to me. Men go their own way. Men gobble their own wimpiness. I don't know what MGTOW. But the same is true with any kind of, victim mentality. Racism is a perfect example. White supremacists, they make me giggle. The stuff they do doesn't. I don't like the stuff that they do, but just, the guys walking around with torches and screaming, and you might as well put a big giant, placard that says, "I can't find my nutsack." You can get a website that says, "Please help me find my nutsack.com." If you want to be cool, you can put a Z in there, nut Z sack, and then you'll be kind of cool. But we all see it. You're not fooling anybody. And I'm making fun of you guys, but whatever it is, and I'm a man, so I can make fun of other men. The same is true for women as well. Women who think that men are out to get them and all that. It's the same thing. But I prefer to let a woman deal with that. It takes one to know one. So I can talk about men and men's insecurities, and I've been there. I've been there. I've been that 20-something-year-old guy who, grew up in a dysfunctional home and a mother who didn't give him enough attention and enough validation. And so that's what I saw everywhere I went. I saw women that didn't want to give to me, and that, here's the I would get bent out of shape if a really hot-looking woman would walk past me in a bikini, because what I saw was what she wasn't going to give me, and so I took it as an insult, and it was just all my crap. I look back on it now, and there were women chasing after me, and I couldn't see it because I was so wrapped up in my own insecurity. So, hey man, whatever it is that you think is doing it to you, that's because that's what you're doing to yourself. You're doing it to yourself inside, and you're projecting it out. And we do this. We look for the things that will justify how we are feeling. And so whatever it is. So let me ask you a question. Do you go onto YouTube and look for the channels that are going to piss you off? Like, do you look for the channels like the InfoWars guy or whomever, so that you can get riled up and start thinking about, yes, those damn foreigners and those damn Muslims and that government and the women and whoever it is that you think, the aliens, the elites that are out to destroy your life, and they did it. They're the ones that did it. And if it weren't for them, ask yourself, how much time and effort do you put into doing that? And then let me ask you again another question. Which universe would you rather live in? I know you're very attached to whatever your beliefs are, but which universe would you rather live in? Would you rather live in a universe where There are, whoever it is, fill in the blank. The fill in the blank are destroying our lives, or destroying the world, or destroying the economy, or destroying our country, or whatever it is. Would you rather live in that universe, or would you rather live in a universe where you can make the decision about how you want to live and your perfect universe? And I'm going to tell you, the majority of people listening to me would rather live in the universe where they are being victimized. Because then, as I said, you can justify your own conflict within yourself, and then you don't have to take any responsibility for the universe that you create. We're not afraid of failure. Human beings are afraid of success. Because when you achieve real success, and you know that's different for everybody, then you're in a world where there aren't any boundaries anymore. That's the scary part. You know, so anyway, I could go on and on about that, but I just found it funny, you know, look, if you're such a masculine guy, if you're so freaking strong, then how is it that anybody can disempower you? You know, if you're the superior race, whichever race that is, then how is it that those other people are able to take away your jobs and your money and your country and your culture? How is anybody able to take anything of yours away from you if you're so strong and you're so superior? We see it. We see it. We see how weak you are. We see how sad and miserable you are. You're not fooling anybody. So if you really want to be strong, you really want to be superior, then get to the place where you don't have to be bothered by any of that. If you're really truly strong and superior, then nobody's going to be able to take anything away from you. So, you know, listen, I haven't achieved 100%. I still got my insecurities. I still got my hot buttons. I don't do well if I'm in public and somebody gives me the stink eye. I want to get into the old, I'm a tough guy kind of thing. I don't do well when people attack me and criticize me. That's my insecurity. So I'd like to get to that place too. You know, it takes one to know one. So I'm laughing at myself as I laugh at you. All right, so we're going to go on, and now that I've babbled, there should be some people online. We've got 29 people. I'll see if there's any questions. By the way, that's the best way to interact with me, is to ask me a question. And if Sethikus is on here and we get into something that I don't know anything about that he talks about and you want to ask him, he can answer if he's on. Then we'll go ahead and we'll play the rest of the interview. We'll see how far we get through today. So again, I want to see your questions. I'm really not interested in your opinions. I'm interested in my opinion. But let's see. Hi, Saeed. Hello, Romney, Germany. Hi, guys. Everybody's saying hello. Hello to everybody. Nostra Dumbass. So Nostra Dumbass, Matt, you're calling yourself that. That's your name. I'm not calling you a dumbass. You're new to my channel, I think. I recommend reading my books because a lot of the questions will be answered. Read my books. Watch more of my videos. Do I think bisexuality is related to being connected to the feminine and masculine energies? Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, I don't think that bisexuality is anything. I mean, I am on, you know, there's a spectrum. I believe in that. I believe that there's a spectrum and people are on a different place in the spectrum. I'm very far on the heterosexual side of the spectrum, but that's me. You know, I think bisexuality, you know, again, I'm not bisexual, so I don't know. Maybe somebody who's bisexual can climb in there and talk about it. But, you know, for me, I think it just depends on where they are in the spectrum. We could get into, you know, past life stuff. And, you know, I do believe that people can change genders in different lives. I think I've chosen to be male the majority of the time. So, you know, it could be all kinds of different things. But I don't think that being bisexual makes anybody more or less evolved. I think it's just, you know, it's like, you know, some people are allergic to, you know, milk and some people aren't. I think it's just like that, just like anything else. I wonder what asexual beings are, or Omnium Germany says, I wonder what asexual beings are connected to. Nah, I don't know. Again, you know, being a Vedic astrologer, I know that some people have stronger sex drives than others, and there's some cool things. You can look in charts and you can find out if somebody's really kinky. You can find out in their chart if they're bisexual, you know, and what, you know, if they have that. You can find out if they have a lot of sexuality. Some people aren't sexual, you know, very sexual. I am, so, you know, but, and I can tell you why, but anyway. So that's, by the way, that's one of the things I look for. You know, if I ever start dating again, I'm going to start asking women to let me look at their chart, because I want to see, you know, what their sexuality is like. Anyway, sexuality is, it's a huge subject. Anyway, I'm not an expert in it, so I don't want to get into stuff I don't know about. All right. Let's see here again. Looking for the questions. Wilma Hopkins can't find her nutsack. Or maybe you're just quoting me. Yeah, the guys, those, seriously, man, those the guys, you guys that think that women are out to get you, seriously, find your nutsack. I can't find my nutsack.com. You should just get your own. Anyway. All right, looking again for the questions. All right. A lot of people saying hello. Thank you for that. Here's a question again. Put question in all caps and I'll find it, or make sure I see big question marks. Nostradamus. Oh no, he already asked that question. All right, so I guess maybe we've gotten through all the questions here. Okay, Lex, lavish, again, I don't see the question mark, but I see it's a question. You seem new to my channel here. Do I dabble in certain herbs to gain power, as in Qi or such? Do I dabble in herbs? I take a lot of ginseng, reishi, the mushroom is good. Those kinds of things are good, but again, they're supplements. You know, you got to do the Qigong. If you want to gain power, do Qigong. Go to qigong.thunderwizard.com. QIGONG.thunderwizard.com, and you'll find out what Qi power is all about. Okay. Again, looking for the questions. Natalia Lokia, question. Do you have any thoughts on universal and personal expressions of divine masculine, divine feminine, and divine neutral energy? I'm not quite sure I understand that question. Do I have any thoughts on universal and personal expressions? It sounds like a huge question, but to be honest with you, nothing in it is stimulating me to talk about anything. You know, what I will say kind of this, when it comes to planets, some planets are more associated, talking about planetary energy, some planets are more associated with male or female energies, like Venus is more associated with the feminine and Mars is more associated with the masculine. But the truth of the matter is that every planet, as well as every person, has both male and female. In fact, you have equal amounts of both. It's not possible to be more one than the other. There may be one that's more expressed than another. I may express masculinity more than femininity, but you have to have both or you wouldn't exist. So let me give you an example like Venus. Venus is associated with the goddess of love and the goddess of fertility. I worship Venus. I love Venus. In fact, you know, my fiance had a lot of Venus in her, and I see her when I worship Venus now. But Venus also has a masculine energy, and there's a deity called in the Vedic Parasurama, and it means Rama with an axe, I believe. And he is a deity, a Venus deity. And the way he is now is he is a warrior who has become a monk. So he has become the spiritual warrior, which is, I really relate to him. And his whole thing, if you ever read any of the myths about Parasurama, is that he was a warrior who, if I remember correctly, his parents or somebody, his mother, somebody was killed by the religious elite who were controlling the world at that time in this myth. And so he became this avenging warrior, and he went and he slaughtered all of the priests, the priestly class. And so as a result of that, he now has to spend eternity in penance meditating and doing all kinds of peaceful things. If you've ever heard of the Himalayan spiritual retreat, it's very popular, called Rishikesha. That's his name. Now his name is Rishikesha. So there's a whole place now that's all about meditating, and it's a very, very sacred place, and all people go there all the time to go on pilgrimages. That's the god Venus. So that's the masculine of Venus. And we could get into the masculine of Mars. So everything has both positive and negative, higher and lower, male and female. I mean, it's all there within all of us. So the idea is to embrace it all. As I said, my fiance was really turned on by the idea that she said she could feel or sense in me masculine and feminine. She used to say that. So I don't know what she was talking about, to be honest, but I take it as a tremendous compliment. All right, so I don't know if I answered your question, but it got me going, so thank you for that, Natalia. Looking for the questions again. All right, question. God damn this computer, Nostradamus says. Okay, I don't see where the question is. Natalia Lokia, okay, so there's not a question there. Question, Nostradamus. I called you by the right name, Nostradamus. Question, will the chart reading you do tell whether a person can become a shaman, spiritual teacher at some point in their life? Very likely, yes. I can see in somebody's chart where that is and how that is. So yes, the short answer to that question is yes. All right, so let's get in now. Let's go ahead and get into the interview with me and Sethikus Boza. This should be coming in right around the point where we stopped last time. So let's see if I can restrain myself and just let it go on for a while, and then we'll come back. So here we go. Let me go ahead and play the credits again so that you know where and how to reach Sethikus Boza and all the kind of stuff that he does. So we'll start that, and then I'll go right into the interview. Which I agree with the Hopi tradition as it's been presented to me. I can't represent the Hopi tradition because I don't know anything about it. I only know what I've read and what I've heard. But from their perspective, they say that in the ancient time, the four races went off into different directions to master different elements. And then at the appointed time, which would be now, right, they come back together and everybody shows what they've learned, and then they create this new syncretic model, which is what I think is happening within me.
Right, and that's beautiful what you're saying, creating the new. And this is what I've been getting as well, that we are here to, now in this hour, catch up the soul cycles, learn to remember what has been forgotten, recalibrate, and then go forward into the new.
Yeah.
Because that's what's happening, people. That's what's going on right now. And it's not to dismiss the ancient traditions. In fact, we need them to actually get back into trajectory where we actually need to be on.
Yeah.
With the last, you're talking about the last 2,000 years, 3,500 years ago, man. That's when the Dark Ones completely took over this reality field, and then came the Dark Ages, the Vatican, and leading up to the present moment. Their jurisdiction is over now. That's why we're feeling what we are, and you're literally confirming, man, things that have been revealed, not only to me but other people in my inner circle. And so this is going out. This is expanding now, and those to whom it's meant, they're picking up on it, and this is going to continue on. And what you're talking about with the runes and Sade and Golder and all that, this is, for me, very, very, very real. The runes are very powerful, and they work. And
they are, and I can only share my experience with the runes. My first experience with them, having worked with other traditions, even other traditions that have an unbroken connection, is I immediately felt fire. That the runes have a definite fiery quality, and that's what the Hopis would say. The Hopis say that what we call the white race now are the people who traveled to Northern Europe to master fire. And who is it that has come up with the technology? Like, I've got a light here that's electricity. I've got a car that starts with a battery, and it's got a spark plug. Everything in European tradition that is now spread over the world starts with fire. We've mastered that. We can talk about whether or not we're using it, consciously or not, but that's a whole other discussion. But the runes to me are a form of spiritual fire. And, I've tried using the runes in ways that I would consider to be mundane magic, and I don't have a lot of success with that. What I do have success with is that the runes connect me to a level of connection with the ascended masters of definitely the European race, but more than that. And here's something that you know this already. I just went through the death of my fiance about 5 weeks ago.
Right.
And throughout that time that she was getting ready to pass, when she was sick, of course I'm flipping out and I'm trying to use the runes to predict, is she going to live? Is she going to die? And the runes wouldn't tell me one way or the other. They would say transformation, or they would say, healing and all that. And so I'd get like a reading of healing, but she'd get physically worse, and I'd get confused. And what it did is it really proved to me that the runes do not see physical death, that they're talking about a level of existence that goes through what we would consider to be life and death. And so to use the runes on that kind of a mundane level, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's like the runes are saying, listen, we are a language of the ascended ones. We are a language on another plane of existence. And when you start to function on that plane of existence, then this meat bag here just happens to be the wardrobe I put on for this little lifetime. And then you get connected back to your true self. Mm-hmm. So, I want to talk a bit about ethnic connection to ethnic DNA. I'm one of those people that I will teach anybody that comes to me, as long as they respect me, they respect their tradition, and they respect themselves. If they follow that, I'll teach anybody. Because, it would be hypocritical of me. I learned so much from my Taoist teachers. I learned so much from all the, from my African teachers. For me to say that I'm not going to teach the secrets of my ancestors to anybody would be ridiculous, especially with the understanding that we're in the state now that the Hopis talk about, where we're coming together. Everybody's going to syncretize their knowledge now. We're going to now, as the human race, we're going to explode and become something else, like you're talking about.
Yeah. So
for me, the runes, I have such a respect for them that I kind of almost don't mess with them. I talk about mantras all day. I'll talk about Qigong all day. I'll talk about secrets. But when it starts to be messing around with the runes, I'm very cautious about that. Because
it's a sacred science, man, like you're talking about.
But it's a science. The runes, I believe, are a science of transformation, like deep, major transformation. And in my my shamanism course, my online shamanism course, I just went through all of the runes, and I I do hour teachings, and I went through all the runes. And what ended up happening is that, and I didn't find this out really as I got through it, but it was like, oh crap, I'm going to talk about this rune now. Because I know if I'm going to spend an hour talking about a certain rune, guess what I get to live through for the next, month or whatever it is. It's going to be that rune. And so now I have, it hit me so hard. And if you go back, if anybody goes back and watches them, you see me talking about specific runes while I'm going through this major personal transformation and all that stuff. So these things aren't just for, trying to make money or get somebody to fall in love with you or any of that stupid crap. This is about, becoming something else. Right. And, I can't really say much more than that. We could probably talk more about that when we get to the elves, but.
Yeah. So when
anyway,
Odin,
some thoughts about the runes.
So when Odin spied the runes, when he hung on the tree for 9 long days, as it says.
Yeah.
That death and rebirth process that he went through is what we experience.
Yes.
When
this is very important. I'm sorry for interrupting, but this.
No, you're fine, man. You're totally fine.
This is, if you want to worship Odin, you have to understand this. Odin died to himself. Mm-hmm. I wrote a book called Odin Says Jesus Was a Coward. And I share in that book what Odin said to me in a shamanic state about Christianity and about Jesus. And it shocked me to the core. I asked, what's the difference? But I was in like the halfway state between being asleep and awake. And I do this all the time. And half the time, or more than half the time, nothing happens. I just throw out a question or something. So I go to Odin and I say, so what's the difference between Jesus dying on the cross and sacrificing himself for human beings and you and your sacrifice on the tree of knowledge? And I heard this loud booming voice say, Jesus was a coward. And that scared the crap out of me. I mean, I'm, having been a previous Christian, I was an exorcist. Mm. So I am not averse to the idea that, some negative entity can come in, and I'm like, do I want to keep going down this road? But I kept with it. And then he went on and he explained to me. But let me get to the essence of it. What Odin is all about is that you are a warrior dying to your old self, dying to your own limitations. And you do it for yourself. And the thought of having somebody else sacrifice themselves for you is such an outright put down. Why would you want somebody to do that for you? They're saying to you, you can't do it. Let me do it for you. It's what you're, if you had, my dad used to do that and used to drive me crazy. Mm-hmm. I want to learn how to do something. My dad would say, just let me do it. And I'd have to sit back and watch him.
Like how unbelievably disempowering.
Yeah, it's just such an insult. And Odin is the spirit of the human race. He is the spirit of it. His name, Woden, means that which is consumed with woe, which is the word woe. He is consumed with the wonder of human conscious awareness. He is constantly being consumed by it. And so that's why he's seen as a god of warfare. Not because he's out to kill and destroy. What we see as killing and destroying is him going, let me transform you. Right. And to us, it looks like we're getting torn apart and all that. But his rage, because it's another word for rage, his rage is not, I want to kill and destroy and get even. It's look at that. Let's beat that. Yeah. That's Odin. So that whole idea of dying to the self, man, you have got to, in every single moment, if we really want to be what we say we want to be, in every single moment, we have to be willing to die to everything we think we know we are, which means we're going to have to get used to being afraid. Because fear is nothing more than saying, there's something I don't understand. I understand this, but I don't understand that. And I don't know what will happen when I get over there. So I don't want to go there. That's what fear says. And Odin says, the whole myth of going to Valhalla, those who die in battle go to Valhalla, are people who are willing to die at any moment for their woad, themselves, their true passion. And that, you know, the closest symbol we could come to that is going off and dying in battle and celebrating that. So, you know, the idea of dying of illness and old age, you go to the underworld, that means that you let fear stop you from being your truest self. And then when you die, guess what? You have to look at it. And you go to the underworld and you have to look at it and you have to go, okay, I really wanted that, and out of fear, I didn't go after what really makes me happy. Let's go back. I want to do it again. Let's do it again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Everything
anyway,
you're saying, no, man, it's cool, man. Everything that you were saying resonates with me, resonates with my experience, resonates with what I feel. Even and it even goes back to the original teaching. It goes back to the ancient wisdom council teaching. Know thyself, and you will then you will know the universe.
Yeah.
And the gods and goddesses, and what I term creator source, higher force, life force, energy, whatever. You know, terms and semantics, a lot of people want to argue these things.
Right.
But what is it that people are really connected to? What is really real within them? Because most of what they think they believe isn't even actually true, because it's not coming from their true core essence, man. And that's what I feel, what you're talking about, making that connection to your true core essence and dying, you know, to yourself, sacrificing yourself unto yourself. And I'm actually taking that on, even when I'm talking, you know, with people. It's like, this is what we got to do. You know, why are you wasting your life being a slave to the matrix when you are here to thrive and expand and evolve in consciousness and abilities, skills, talents, gifts, all of that, man. You know what I'm saying? And so everything you're saying definitely 100% resonates with what I've experienced in context to what I'll say Scythian Golder for me personally has been so far. Doesn't mean that more isn't coming, because it is. But the runes work. They work. And I do work with them myself, but it's more personal. I have students, I have services as well. But I'm getting people in the position to dive into this, man, to dive into that being obsessed with self-awareness and wanting to know how the mind actually works and how they actually operate, man, because everybody's unique. Yeah. There are universal fundamentals and principles that are eternal. They can't be altered, but they can be manipulated, and they have been manipulated against us, especially with these religions that throw everything on the inverse and completely suck the power away. And so when you're telling me this, you had this experience with Odin. Odin came to me himself as well, man. And it happened. I didn't invoke him. It just happened, man. And I was like there at the feet of his throne, and he was telling me everything. He said, "Tell the people it's all bullshit. Tell the people that we are ready to evolve as well." And that's confirming what you're talking about with everything is about to, you know, we're coming into the time now where the new is going to be created, and they're ready too. They're coming with us, man. It's all in trajectory, man. I got chills, man, talking about this. Now, when it comes to the original human consciousness, what's been confirmed for me, and I did a segment recently with a friend of mine. Her name is Cora St. Louis, but she's very into the Fae, and I was studying, you know, our tradition, getting into the Alfar, and I think it is the Vanir. Is this in context what that is, the original humans that were once a part of things that we can't even necessarily wrap our minds around, or was that?
Okay, so I think he's about to get into some questions about the elves. So we would have moved into a different subject. So let's take a little bit of a break from there. I'll check and see if there are any questions, and then we can continue with the with the interview. So, all right, I got to back up. I wish this thing would just stop where I left it. Instead, every time a new question or comment comes, it bumps up and I have to go looking for it. Oh my gosh, life is so difficult, isn't it? Okay, so, all right, so I think this is where I was. So again, I'm going to just scroll here looking for the questions. Dive into Spirit 33 says, question, where in your birth chart would you look to see if someone was a shaman in a past life? And where would you look in a chart to see if they're a shaman in this life? Well, there is definitely an answer to that. That's something that I remember learning about, but to be honest with you, I don't remember what that technique is to find out what somebody was in a past life. Because I guess part of that is because I'm more interested in now. I mean, who cares what you were in a past life? So here's the thing about past lives. If you've ever noticed, whenever you've had past life regressions, what you remember is all the traumatic stuff. You don't remember all the super beautiful, you remember the traumatic stuff, because it's the traumatic stuff that we hold on to. That's the traumatic stuff is where the lesson is for us. So I guess, you know, just thinking out loud here, that's probably why I don't spend a lot of time thinking about that. But where would you look in a chart to see if they're a shaman in this life? Again, we're talking about Vedic astrology, not Western astrology. So the thing about Western astrology and Vedic astrology is that they do some different calculations, and so things are going to be in different houses and all that kind of stuff and different signs. So if you're talking about Western astrology, again, I don't know how to answer that question. But in Vedic astrology, there are a bunch of different places. You know, I'm going to look in the 8th house. I'm going to look in the 5th house. I'm going to look in the 12th house. I'm also going to look at your projection. Those kinds of things are going to tell me a lot about where you are, maybe even in your 1st house. But again, it depends on the chart. So you have to take it case by case. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, I'm looking for the questions. Okay, Saeed says, after reading your books on the runes, I look at them now as a sort of holy scripture, which has given me more fulfillment than any holy book I've read. That's an incredible compliment. Thank you, sir. Yeah. See, here's the thing about, if you're ever going to be a teacher, this is something you need to understand. I read that and my instinct is to downplay it because I'm aware of my limitation as a human being. But you have to understand that if you're going to be a teacher, the more that you limit yourself, you limit the experience of your students. And that's, again, it's like the Aruda. You don't have to feel it for people to see the reflection of what they're supposed to see. So when I get a compliment like that, now I've been doing this long enough to know that that's his experience. And I can't take that away from him. And it's because it's not coming from me so much as what the universe is using, you know, putting through me to Saeed. And so it's my responsibility, if he has that kind of experience, to let him have that, as long as I personally know that, you know, I'm just another human. As long as I know that, I don't get in the way of my students' experiences of me. But what will happen over time, especially if somebody works with me in person, which I don't do a lot of these days, but you know, whenever I used to teach spirit fighting in person, the energy that they would feel coming from me, they would put me on this really elevated status, and then after a while they'd realize I was human, and then they'd have to get used to the fact that I was just a human being, and then did they still want to work with me? So anyway, so that's a whole other thing. I should probably, you know, while I'm on the subject, people have been asking me about training, and I've kind of reached my capacity in terms of working with people on a personal level, because I'm getting so many astrology clients as well as that. And I started talking about, you know, maybe I should create some kind of a certification program so that I could, you know, delegate, so that more people could have one-on-one relationships with a mentor. And anyway, so put that out there in your thinking caps, in your meditation. One of the best ways, by the way, one of the best ways if you want to support this work if you're not already working with me on some level, is to go to thunderwizard.com and become an initiate, which I think is $25 a month. You get there's tons of videos, hour-long videos that I teach, and I teach some secrets, and I teach the basics of shamanism, and we go into some advanced shamanism stuff. So, that's the best way to support this. And there's no limit on that. I can take 1 billion people at $25 a month. I can only take so many, $108 a month people. Does that make sense? So that's the best way to support this work. All right, let me see if there's any, looking for the questions. All right, here's a question. Nostra Dumbass. It's a funny name. Question: what do you think the purpose for demons are? There is no purpose for demons. The assumption in your question, again, you're probably new to my work. Watch my videos, read my books. But there's no such thing as a stupid question, as long as it's honest. What do you think the purpose for demons are? There is no purpose. That comes from like the monotheist, where you have this one God, and we can't understand all the crazy stuff, and monotheists live in this really unjust universe, and so we have to say we don't understand the reasonings of God. And so things like demons, if you believe that demons are these beings that are looking to destroy humans and we need God's protection in order to protect us from them, then you ask, well, what's the purpose? Why did God create demons? Well, there is no purpose like that. First off, demons are subservient to human beings. That means every negative force, if there is such a thing as demons, and I'm using the word demons in a much larger context, which would describe any negative entity, whether they're human or otherwise. These are individuals who, number one, are operating from a victim mentality. These are entities who operate from a victim mentality. As a result of having a victim mentality, they cut themselves off from the life force energy of the universe, the infinite energy of the universe. So what ends up happening is they become hungry. Like the Buddhists call them hungry ghosts. They can never be satisfied. And so they seek to get their energy in other places. And eventually, as you go further down in your vibration, whatever the hell that means, then you start to feed off of things like negative emotions and fear. And predators are like this. Predators and serial killers and people like that, they feed off of people's fear and negative emotion. And the reason for that is because they're cut off from themselves. They're cut off from their infinity. So there's no reason like there's a reason for them in this, all that kind of crap. It's a direct result of consciousness on whatever level diverting itself from its own awareness. And we create demons. If you have a really intense emotion, hatred, fear, again, I make fun of these, I make fun of the racists, and I make fun of the MGTOW guys who are just so wrapped up in the negativity because their mom didn't love them enough. I'm not making fun of that part. That's sad. But then they get all wrapped up in themselves, and then they create this whole I hate women, and women do this, and women do that, and all that. Well, that'll create a demon. If you do that long enough, and especially if you die in the midst of that, that gets released out of your lower self. That becomes a demon. So this is why, again, we have the responsibility to follow our true awareness and our highest consciousness, because otherwise you're going to create crap. It's just like living here. You can't live here without creating waste. The amount of trash that every human creates. That's another reason why I don't like the idea of having kids, because you're responsible for all of the waste and the trash that kid is going to create throughout their life, because you made the decision to squeeze out another human being. So the same thing is true when it comes to us. And so, if you don't want to create a demon, then dive into your true essence and your true happiness. Take responsibility for all of your pain. Take responsibility for all of your victim mentalities. We all have it. I have my insecurities. I'm open about those. We all have them. I'm continuing to want to work through and evolve past them, because I want to make this place better than when I leave than when I got here. So I don't know if I answered your question there. All right, so moving on, see if there's any other questions. Lamp, again, if you put question in the beginning, I can find it easier. Lamp says, I need help. I'm trying to get, you mean you're trying to? I'm trying to get the Celestial Qigong because I can afford it now, but both links lead to the shipped version, not the online streaming version. Anyone know where that is? There should be a link for the streaming version, qigong.thunderwizard.com. So I don't know why, you know, some people get confused with all that. Anyway, so you should be able to find the streaming version. And what happens is you buy it, you hit the PayPal button, you buy it, and then I get an email. And so I might not get back to you for 24 hours, but I get an email and then I send you a link. And the link you get to, you know, go to the private videos. That's the streaming version. So, you know, email me. You know, I'll return it. If you buy something and it's not what you wanted, email me. I'll refund your money. By the way, sometimes people, when they're out of the country, if they buy an astrology reading or the streaming version, for some reason PayPal will put a shipping price for things that are outside of the country. I always refund that immediately. So don't let that stop you, you know. And I'll refund your stuff. If you change your mind and said, I changed my mind, I don't want it, you know, I'll refund your money. I'm not here to steal anything from anybody. All right, let's see here. Again, looking for the questions. You have to pay express shipping. I don't know anything about PayPal making you pay express shipping. But I think I answered that question. You know, if you're out of the country and it says it's going to charge you shipping, I'll refund that to you, you know, within 24 hours, you know, 48 at the outset. All right. Email is, you can go to info@thundershamanism.com is one of my emails. This is weird. Ramnan Germany says, I don't think the creator of Qigong is still alive. All you haven't learned on your own should be free. I don't know what you're talking about. None of that statement is true. On both levels. All you haven't learned on your own should be free. You don't understand the concept of training or learning. Let's talk about money for a second. I don't know you, Ramnan Germany, but that statement tells me that you have an inferiority relationship with money. Anybody who says that such and such should be free, and yet they're paying for cell phones, they're paying for cars, they're paying for electricity, they're paying for all kinds of things. They pay to go to the doctor. You know, I don't know, maybe in your country they don't do that. But you pay for all kinds of things. But when it comes to spirituality, we can't pay for that. Everything is spiritual. Everything is physical. Everything, there is no separation. That came from Christianity. But in my experience, people who have this need to spiritualize things and say spirituality should be for free does not understand. Look, especially when it comes to things like shamanism, people go, oh, shamans don't charge. That is the biggest load of crap. Go to Mongolia and train with a shaman. The first thing they're going to do is charge you money. You know, we look at the Native American tradition, but you still got to show up with some tobacco. You got to show up with something. And the point of that is that you know, the phrase, you get what you pay for. Meaning if you want something in the universe, you have to provide something. There has to be a pay. So I take money because money is what I use to survive. If I lived in a different time, I might take tobacco. I might take a blanket. I might take something else. There has to be an exchange of energy. And if you don't understand that, and I know people who, you know, I run into this all the time, people who don't want to pay for stuff, but they want to be best friends with a teacher. I'll be your friend and then you can teach me. Those are people, I think, who didn't get enough love from their parents. I know, because I went through it too. And what people want from spiritual teachers is what they didn't get from their parents. They want that unconditional love. And there's only one being in the universe that can give unconditional love. And that's the mother. Mothers give unconditional love. Everybody else, their love is conditional. That includes teachers and everybody else. So you got to grow up. You got to grow up. If you want something in life, you have got to, and the thing is, if you don't put energy into it, you won't get anything out of it. If I gave out my stuff for free, and the times that I have given out my stuff for free, and still the stuff that I now give out for free on my YouTube channel, there are teachings on there that are so profound that cost me thousands of dollars that I give away for free that people don't even spend time doing. They have no clue. You could hand them the most valuable gem in the world and they have no clue what they're looking at. They don't respect it. And it's, I'm not upset about it. It's just the truth. You get what you pay for. And if it doesn't have value to you, then you won't learn it and you won't get anything out of it. So I have to challenge you on that. Sorry. All right. Let's see here. Going on to the questions. Question: are there any negative energies, situations, or are they all just learning opportunities? Well, I mean, that sounds kind of like a judgment. Are there any negative energies? What do you mean by that? Are there negative people? Are there serial killers? Are there, abusers? Yeah, absolutely there are. And are they all just learning opportunities? They're also learning opportunities. I prefer to take responsibility for everything. So both of those sound external to me. A learning opportunity, that again, I'm not saying that you meant to say it this way, but it sounds, the way that it's put together is, again, like Christianity. Christianity says, well, God gave this test to you so you would learn X, Y, and Z. And God is sitting there making all these decisions about what you go through and who ends up born without any limbs and all that. I much prefer the universe that I take responsibility for everything that I experience and I encounter. So if it is a learning opportunity, it means that I wanted to learn something. Whatever challenges I go through is something I created. I'm talking to myself now. I woke up this morning feeling sorry for myself for reasons you can guess. But you know what? There's nothing to be gained out of that. There's even that whole it's God giving us an opportunity to learn. He knows best, and again, I'm not saying that's where you're coming from, but that's what I hear in that. I much prefer, because then when you take responsibility for everything, and if you say that you've created it in a past life or in between lives, you've created everything in your life, then that means that you have the ability to overcome it. Because you wouldn't give yourself something you couldn't overcome. That gives me power, that gives me hope. That's why I choose to live that way. And here's the thing, I at least consciously chose to adopt that attitude long before I started teaching all this stuff. And it was because I was tired of just kind of living in a world where things just happened to me. And, I went through a lot of really tough, horrible crap in my life, which I won't get into, but it was like the question that I asked in the beginning. Do you want to live in a universe where something or somebody has control over you? Or do you want to live in a universe where you can create everything that you want? And that's the universe I choose to live in. And it has proven to be true. I jumped off that cliff and I began to live like that because I realized even if I was wrong, it's still a better way to live. Even if I was wrong and that things did happen to me and I didn't have control over this, that, and the other thing, I chose to live as though everything was something I was responsible for. And we could get into the difference between having control and being responsible. Those are two separate things. That we'll have to talk about another time. But I can tell you now, decades later, that it is absolutely a fact. And some of this takes a lot of time and a lot of patience and a lot of discipline. But if you adopt that attitude from the beginning, that you are responsible for everything in your life, and you will always be responsible for everything in your life, then you no longer have to feel guilty, you no longer have to feel like a victim, and you no longer have to feel any of that crap, any of that powerlessness. You don't have to. But it starts with a choice, and then you have to continue to make that choice over and over and over and over and over again, and then it starts to build up. And then pretty soon you get to be where I'm at, now in my life where I can see how I've built my life, and I enjoy what I have. Anyway, let's see. I just answered the other guy's question here. What's my perspective of life? It's a huge question, so I just gave you that. Anyway, Emerson's Coffee, Bike, and Rum Shop question: can you do Qigong for others? Set an intention for Qigong. I'm doing Qigong right now as I'm listening. The answer to that is yes. But then I start asking why. I would want to talk to you as to why you're doing that. Why are you doing Qigong for somebody else? Let them live their own life. We would have to talk, so bear that in mind. I don't know everything about this, but my first impression is it sounds kind of codependent to me. Let people live their, here's the thing, when it comes to addiction, alcoholism, for example. If you see somebody who's lying in the gutter in their own excrement and whatever else in their puke, and your thinking is, I know, I'll take that person in and I'll clean them up and I'll give them some food and some money and some love, that will help them. No, you're helping to kill them. The best thing you can do for them is let them stay there until they realize that I don't want to live this way anymore. And then they reach out. It always happens. They reach out to the universe and they say, just help me get through this. And they start to live on a moment by moment. And then they start to take responsibility and they create their own lives. So Qigong, you can do Qigong for other people. Parents, like for instance, parents are said to be responsible for their kids, so they do mantras for their kids. They chant for their kids. But my response is do Qigong for you. Because again, the best way that you can help others is by making yourself as strong and as happy and as independent as you can possibly be. That in and of itself is going to vibrate, and everybody in your sphere of influence is going to be brought up to the next level, and they'll either come along with you and become more independent and empowered, or they will have to make the decision, and sometimes people will leave you because they don't want to grow. It's important to know. Sometimes when relationships die, it's because the other person wasn't able to follow you. And you got to let them learn it themselves. Having said that, the answer to your question is yes, you can, but I'd need to talk to you to give you a better opinion on whether you should do Qigong for others. Maybe you're a Qigong healer, because there is a Qigong healer out there, Michael Lomax. You can look him up. I know of him. We've interacted a little bit. He'd probably remember my name. But he is a Qigong healer. He does a lot of Qigong, and then he uses it to heal people. He does distance healing and stuff like that too. But he does it for a business. That's different. So, maybe that's something that's wanting to come out of you. Anyway. All right, so more questions. Question, Miguel L. Question, how do you sort out which ancestral line you follow and which one you don't? First off, go by your instincts. Your instincts will tell you what works for you. Look into different lineages, regardless of what you think your ethnic ancestry is. Look into anything that you feel a strong connection to. I've got people who train with me who are not ethnically connected to the Northern tradition, who I believe have past life connections. There are some people of mixed ancestry who, so your DNA will tell you what you need, or your past life will tell you what you need. And there's no which one you don't. Don't worry about which one you don't. Do the ones that you like, and don't worry about the ones you don't like. So you don't have to decide, I'm not going to do that one. Listen, it's a smorgasbord out there. I'm all for people reconnecting to their ethnic ancestry. I think it's incredibly healing and empowering for everybody. But, I also think that you should do what you want to do regardless of what anybody thinks. So, do I think there's a difference between maternal and paternal lineage? I don't care to make that distinction. Listen to, and here's the other thing too. We are so intermixed now. Even me, you look at me and I look, a certain race, but there's probably a lot of Celtic in there. There's probably Germanic and Who knows what else is in here? I may look like one particular race, but I'm probably a bunch of different ethnicities all wrapped up in there. You know, there are some guys, by the way, there's some guys, the racist guys, they like to go on and get their DNA, and they're coming back, and what's coming back is telling them that they've got African ancestry in them and all that. That makes me laugh. They got Jewish ancestry, and oh my God. So who cares? And who cares ultimately? Really, just follow what your instincts want for you. Your instincts always know. Your soul always knows what it needs. All right, made me laugh. Okay, so question. Somebody asked a question. How do you sort out which ends? Okay, I already answered that. Dumbass. Dumbass. Question: can I bribe you to rush order my chart? No, that's not fair to other people who've been waiting a long time. Sorry, I wish I could, but if you were to bribe me, you couldn't afford it. So anyway, patience is a good thing. All right, let's see. Question: John Jones, what are your thoughts on the I Ching? I like the I Ching. I'm not a master of it. I played around with it for a while. I think it's amazing. It's an amazing book, and it's an amazing practice of divination. What do I think about Crystal Skull? I don't know enough about it. Sounds kind of like New Age hooey to me, but what the hell do I know? Again, looking for the question here. Let's see. Question. So are you asking, are demons dwarves? Well, yeah, I mean, in a sense, yes. Again, a demon is any entity that has chosen to operate from a place of victimhood. You know, all angry people are victims. All angry people who spend their whole time ranting and raving about those people who are doing something to them. They're insecure and they're victims. And those are the people who end up finding reasons to justify violence and other things, right? Terrorists are a perfect example. So, yeah, they can start out as a dwarf, but that turns into a negative entity, which we would then call a demon. My mother and people who ask me for prayer, what should I do if people ask for prayer? Well, that's a good question. You know, follow your instinct. Here's the thing. Are you doing it because you honestly feel empowered when you pray for them or when you do Qigong for them? Are you doing it out of guilt? You know, why are you doing it? Follow that. You don't owe anybody anything. Let me just tell you right out. You don't owe anybody anything. And you owe yourself first. And if, you know, true giving is empowering. You know what I mean? Like people who give expecting something. There was a guy who used to come on the channel, and that's all he did. He didn't do anything else. He didn't read the books. He didn't do any, you know, the whole point of this channel is to get you introduced to the material so you can take action, by the way. I'm not just here to spout. I love doing it, but, you know, get out of your head and go do something. And he came on and he was upset once because he had contributed. There's a, you know, you can give a donation. And he gave me like $50 or something like that. And then he came on and he said, I gave you $50 and you didn't say anything. And my thought was, why should I? I mean, if I give a donation, it's because it makes me feel good. I don't need anybody to thank me. You know, that's you know, a gift is a gift. It means you give it away. If you give something because you want to get something back, it's not a gift anymore. It's you're trying to take somebody hostage. So anyway, I don't know how I got off on that, but I asked for prayer. You know, follow what you want to do. You know, and we do have we do have some kind of responsibility for family members, but especially like children. But if you're, you know, your mom asks for a prayer, and you know, if you want to do it, great. If you want to do Qigong for her, great. Otherwise, just throw out a prayer. Odin, help my mom. You know, and it could be as simple as that. And if you ask Odin, Odin is all about self-responsibility anyway. So that you're kind of asking Odin, hey, Odin, help them become more self-responsible. All right. Michael Lomax. Yeah, he's a great guy. Very powerful healer. Let's see. Any more questions here? Question. I know you're more specialized regarding Norse gods as far as you know. I've got a lot of experience in a lot of things. But would you say all the old pagan faiths the world over are of equal value? I don't understand that question. Who's comparing? I don't understand that question. I mean, yeah. I don't know. Why would somebody think one path is superior to another? You know, I go off on Christianity, but not because I consider it a spiritual path. I consider it a contrived, fake thing that was created to mimic a spiritual path. But any spiritual path that comes from, especially that has an unbroken connection into prehistory, I honor all of them. Sometimes I get more out of some than others, but so I guess the answer is yes. I mean, of course I would think they were equal. All right, let's see. And do you think our present ancestry is pertinent given... I mean, it is pertinent, you know. Look, I've tried to be pretty clear about that I'm not an exclusionist of any kind, racial or social or, you know, any other kind. But I also had a really powerful experience when I discovered, because I didn't know, my whole life I thought I was Celtic. When I discovered I was of Norse ancestry, and then I started reading the Norse myths, and some stuff in my DNA came alive, and it was really empowering to me. And I think that's really important. And I think all these people, especially racists, if they really understood that, then they would be the opposite of racists. Because if you're truly, truly empowered and you are secure in yourself, the last thing you want to do is try and exclude it from anybody. Nor are you worried about it transforming into something else, i.e., you know, mixing of the races. There would be no fear in that. If you have fear, it means you're insecure. Period. End of story. If you're angry and you're exclusionary, it's you're afraid. Period. End of story. You're a pussy. I don't know how else to describe it. Okay, so let's move on here. All right, so question. The Fae would like to know about this race. That's a Celtic thing, so I'm not an expert in the Celtic traditions, so I highly recommend finding a druid who might be able to help you with that. Free Willy, what is your opinion on the various Norse reconstructionist movements like Ancestral? I talked about that a lot. I think I don't know all of them, and my experience is that the ones that I would like are the ones that you don't hear a lot about. The loudest ones that make the most noise tend to be the more exclusionary. And there are people out there who are racist, and they are looking for ways to justify their racism, and so they gravitate to Ancestral. And there's a lot of racists in Ancestral, period. And you know, the guy who started Ancestral in North America, I would say started it primarily out of a political desire to justify his racism. You know, and you know, whatever. Put it, and everybody's a mixed bag. Nobody, you know, nobody's 100% evil or 100% good. So that doesn't mean that there aren't a bunch of good things that this individual does. But I mean, I got to tell you from my perspective, you know, and my perspective also, I guess, if I get out of that into some less controversial stuff, the Ancestral crowd, for the most part, that I've run into, again, I've only run into a small amount, they have very limited understanding. They don't understand what true Indo-European religion is. They don't understand the roots of it. And so you get, I talked about it yesterday, like, you know, why does Thor have a belt, and why does his belt give him 50%, you know, more power when he wears it? Well, unless you understand energy work, and unless you've trained in other traditions outside of the modern Western tradition, you're not going to understand that. And so you've got a lot of these Asatru who are stuck in their head. They're taking dualist Christian values and they're pasting it onto polytheism, and they don't understand what they're doing. Having said that, everything has to have its genesis, and we start out as infants, and infants are dualistic. So I think maybe in a couple hundred years, maybe Asatru will have evolved into something else. Right now, for the most part, you get my opinion on where I'm at for the most of it. Anyway, I'm sorry, I probably hurt some people's feelings, and anyways. John Jones, all our past lives, ? Do you think we tend to stick to the same culture throughout most of our past lives? I don't know. I think that's like people. Some people are different. Some people like to stay in the same thing. I don't know. I think everybody's different. Let's see. John Jones, question. Do you feel to branch out in other aspects of spiritual growth? Well, I mean, I don't think you know a lot about me. If you knew my background, you'd know that that's what I've done all my life. Miguel L. question. How do you perceive visions? Watch more of my videos. You're new to my channel. That's a big question. Watch the channel. Watch the videos on shamanic journeying. Get my books. Read my books. Okay. Yeah. Blaxicon in Taiwan. Okay, I don't see a question there. Yes, there is. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. You spoke on power plants before in other videos, and in general, they keep you in your head too much. Have they ever helped you in your journey? Why are you asking that? You already have my opinion on it. My opinion on power plants is that they are like training wheels. You know, if you really want to learn how to ride a bike, you got to take your training wheels off. If you get really attached to your training wheels and you take them off, you know, it just hampers you. So whether they have helped me or not in the past is kind of irrelevant. The Taoists and the Vedics both used power plants. The soma drink, which was about Thor. Which was about Indra. The priests would create this drink called the soma, and they would take different plants. I think ephedra was one of them. So they would take all different kinds of stimulants and hallucinogens, and they would do all these things and put them in the moonlight and do chants over them, and then on a certain night they would put the concoction together and they'd drink it and they'd get loopy out of their mind, and they would then write the Vedas. But that was done then. That's how the universe wanted to do things then. The Vedics and the Taoists both learned that you could have the same effects that power plants have and greater effects without any of the side effects. And once they realized that it was actually more powerful to do it without them, they stopped using them. So that's why I don't do them. And I can tell you from experience, the spirit fighting especially gets me so deep and so out there, beyond anything any power plant could do for me. So that's why I recommend it. Not doing them. Which books would you recommend first to someone? I haven't written them in a way where you go A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So go on to michaelwilliamdenney.com. Denney is spelled D-E-N-N-E-Y. michaelwilliamdenney.com, and look through all my books and get the ones that connect to you. Start with the first one, although a lot of my feelings have changed since then. The Thunder Wizard Path, you'll get an idea, but a lot of that has changed. I don't think the same way anymore. So follow your instinct, guys. This is here's the thing about my path. I kind of present my path the way that I lived it, which is I never waited for anybody to tell me what to do. I went out and if I didn't know something, I went out and researched it. And I put a lot of time into looking for things and finding things. So I give a lot of materials to people, and I know probably I'd be better if I were to tell people do this, A, B, C, D, F, and G. I know a lot of people want that, and they get bored, and they lose interest because somebody isn't telling them what to do all the time. But that's because I'm expecting to give it to people like me who are going to know and want to look at this and eat this and try that and do this. So anyway, that's my thought about that. What are your opinions on approaching spirituality with a scientific method? That's exactly what spirituality is. Spirituality is a science. Mantras are a science. Qigong is a science. Everything is a science. And it all, you know, this is the difference between the New Age hoo-ha, is that everybody can believe whatever the hell they want and do it, and nothing means anything. You know, I remember I tried, you know, hanging out with some, what they called themselves pagans and Wiccans. I don't know enough about all of them, but I only know the ones that I hung out with because I wanted to see what they were about. And they were just so lost in their head. And they were sick. They were physically sick. They smoked cigarettes and they were really unhealthy. And this one woman comes over to me and she says, "You have a dragon and his name is Henry." Or no, George. His name is George. And George says, and it was just like, what are you, 3 years old? What are we doing here? There's no science to that. That's just wanting to get lost in something. But, you know, Qigong is a science. It's all a science. All right. Can you teach spirit fighting online? No. I can only teach it in person, and I only do that, you know, if I really believe somebody has the ability to handle it. But no, even if I wanted to teach online, I couldn't, because you have to be there to adjust people's posture and adjust tiny little things so that the energy flows. And there has to be a transmission. There has to be an energy transmission. So just being with your teacher. This is why you want to learn Qigong and Tai Chi and stuff like that with a teacher, because just by being in their presence, they're going to transmit energy to you. So the short answer to that is no. Okay, so let's get back to, we're out of questions, which is good. Let's get back to, and by the way, I'm thinking I should try the, whatever the, somebody said the Emerson's Coffee said something about, you know, a certain kind of super chat or something like that. Anyways, I was going to try that, but I forgot. Anyway, let's get back to, all right, another question just popped in here. Can a smell be the equivalent of the nectar or soma? I don't know about the equivalent, but I know that a lot of times that you can pick up spiritual smells and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not going to say no to that. Are you familiar with combo at all? Detox from a frog? No, I'm not familiar with that. Okay. Yeah, I was going to say something else. Anyway, let's move on. So I'm going to go back to the interview here. First, I'm going to introduce it again so you can see my links and you can see Sethikus Boza's links, and then we'll see how far we get through this thing. Maybe we'll get through this thing today. Maybe not. Anyway, so here we go. Let's get back into the interview.
Something that, well, obviously it's something we've been disassociated from, but it's also in alignment with everything. Because, you know, like when I was a kid, man, I was very into fantasy. I was always, you know, checking out books on giants and you know, like Lord of the Rings and you know, all that kind of stuff. Fascinated me, but it's like, why am I drawn to this? Why is that there, you know, this pull, you know, towards this thing? Because I believe at one time, actually not, I believe, I know at one time it was real. Yeah. And I think this is to do with the Alfar specifically. So if you could share with me your insights on the Alfar, man, that you know, go into the next phase of the segment now, that would be fucking awesome.
Yeah. I wasn't planning on sharing this, but it kind of got me stimulated to talk about this, since we're talking about, you know, the ancient human beings. And it's going to sound like I'm talking about something else, but I'm going to bring it around to this, so it'll take a little time. But there are some caves in Northern Europe, I believe they're in France, that forget the name of I think the Chauvet caves. I can't remember which one of those, but in any case, they were just recently exposed, and they had been covered over for 25,000 years, I believe it was. And in these caves, you see paintings on the walls of these caves, and the cave goes back really deep. And I was watching a documentary about it, and so the guy asked the typical question. He says, you know, why did people put those paintings there? And the guy comes with a typical response, well, you know, it's sort of like graffiti. You know, people have egos and they need to put down, you know, who they were and what were there. But there is no representation of human beings in that cave. In that cave, which is in a valley next to a river, and if you put it all together, this cave covered over with forest, and there's a river coming out of it, we're talking about the symbolism is very clear. This is the womb of the earth. And as you walk into the cave, the first thing you see is hands, human hands, not human beings. You won't see any human being anywhere in there. You go in the cave and you find all the different animals that are in the cave that at that time, in Ice Ages. So we're talking about elephants and lions and horses and rhinoceroses and all this stuff that was running around in Europe at that time. And you get finally to the back of the cave, and at the back of the cave you see the closest thing you can find to a human representation on a stalactite, and that is the torso of a female. And not like a complete torso, just, you know, these huge pendulous breasts and the womb. And so when I didn't know what that was all about, and I decided I was going to go do some shamanic journeying about it. And I'd heard a guy talk about it, and he said when he was in that cave, the guy who discovered it, you know, rediscovered it, he said he could feel the eyes of other people in that cave. He could feel that he was in somebody else's cave. He could feel them there. So when I went back and I did a journey and I wanted to know what was this all about, what I saw wasn't a bunch of primitive human beings in skins and torches, you know, trying to figure out what that animal is, you know, all that kind of stuff. What they were doing was they had felt they were in the womb of the earth. And they could see on the walls, coming out of the walls, they could see these animals. And from their perspective, this was where the animals were birthed and let go. So what did they do? They painted the animals on the walls. And then they went back all the way to the back end of that cave, and then they saw the feminine, the goddess, the earth goddess. Now, that's all very wonderful and beautiful, but I thought about that. What's most important about that, going back to what the modern mind says, well, you know, human beings are egotistical, so we kind of have to put our mark. There was no human beings anywhere in that, except for the feminine, the goddess. And I asked, I said, why are there no people in there? And what came back to me is that they said, we didn't realize that we were physical beings. We painted that to protect those animals, that this was the womb of the mother, and by doing this, this was an act of magic to protect those animals. Now, what's interesting is that that cave stayed like that for at least 10,000 years, untouched. It was held sacred by human beings for 10,000 years. If a cave like that was found now, you know, unless you put a guard around it, you know, there's going to be graffiti and all kinds of crap real quick. We don't have that kind of respect. So what happened after about 10,000 years, there must have been a shift in human consciousness, because there was a landslide that covered it over until just a few years ago. And now it is sealed off, hermetically sealed, so that people can't go in there and with their breath destroy everything. You can see the footprints
in crystalline form of, somebody's wolf that came in there, the pet wolf. You can see bears, you can see all their torches, and it's now a sacred temple. These are the ancestors. There's a reason why when you go further back in time, you have less and less technological things left over. It's not because they were primitive, it's because they didn't need that stuff. For them to live in a teepee made out of skin did not limit their abilities to experience and to go. And again, they told me, we didn't realize we were physical beings. We felt like we were spirits that were walking around tending to this amazing garden that we call the earth. Those, to me, that's what's coming to me now, is that's when I talk about the elves, that's what I'm talking about. They are people who have transcended. Now, in the Taoist tradition, whether it's true or not, I can't say. I feel that it is. When you get to certain levels of advancement in the energy practices, the first levels are you can die and then resurrect yourself. Then when you get to the point where you become what they call, see, it's not enlightenment like we talk about it now. They talked about it becoming a perfected immortal. And what they mean by that is that they had energetically perfected themselves. And what'll happen is you'll get somebody at that level and they're working and perfecting their energy. And when they do it, the way they've accomplished it is that when their student who comes in, who's taking care of them, brushing off the bugs or whatever, because they're sitting in caves for, who knows how long, what you will find is a pile of hair and fingernails and whatever clothes they're wearing and nothing else. Because when you get to that place where your energy vibrates to that next level, you don't stop existing. You're just no longer on this physical plane. And that, to me, is what the elves are. They're human beings who, and I can't say I know how, other than my instinct is that they've gotten to that level. And they still exist. They're still humans, and they're still, the holders of ancient knowledge. And their job is just simply to advise us when we ask for it. And so for me, what I found is that the direction for them is the northwest, which is also the direction of the moon. And so if you want to connect with them, you can do a ritual to them facing the northwest and try it. All you have to do is just simply ask. Ask for them, just give me guidance. And if you sit and listen, you will start to see things on another level. It will come in very subtly, but you'll feel yourself starting to get a little bit lighter, and then you'll start to see things a little bit differently, and you'll see specifically how you can change the way you are interfacing with this matrix so that you can achieve your highest awareness. That's all they care about. They're only there to help us do that. And they're just sitting there, who knows what's on the other side for them. But I get the feeling like they're sort of on there's a boundary that if they go past it, they'll go to some other level. And they're sort of waiting at that boundary and looking back at us and just sort of being there to help us get to where they are so that we can take that job over from them. And then they'll go to wherever it is that they go next.
Right. And that's what I was just picking up on, is that state of mind, that's way of being, way of living and doing, it's going to manifest again. And I feel it within myself, even in connection with what we just talked about, getting into Saving Galder. But this as well. And we are literally on the threshold now, on a timeline, coming back onto the original, like we are meant to. And it's beautiful what you're saying, man, because that it is absolutely 100% confirming what I myself know, what other people in my inner circle know. You know what I'm saying? So this is expanding, this is going out, and we're going to come back to that. And you were talking about they didn't realize that they were physical, right? And think about that. We live in a death culture. You're experiencing, I don't want to say the loss of someone that you loved, because we've always existed. You have always existed. I have always existed. She has always existed. energy cannot die. But it is about remembering what we are connected to and coming back into trajectory like you're talking about, because the things that the ancients were capable of, we still don't know everything.
Yeah.
Let alone what we are actually capable of now once we actually come back onto that and allow the integration and the healing, you know, to take place. And that's another thing I wanted to talk about with you tonight was healing and power of the mind in right action and manifestation. Everything that I do with my studies and what I practice and also what I teach my students is I take it back to the first cosmic law. It's all about your state of mind. Everything in the universe is a mental projection. As above, so below, as within, as without, right? And this is why they do mind control. That's why there's such an assault on the mind, but people don't realize what the true mind is. Yeah. And what, as far as I'm concerned, the true mind has everything to do with your true core essence. What Odin is obsessed about tapping into and you know, allowing spirit to ride the vessel. When I uploaded the Save segment that I have on Black Earth Productions, the Bone Kindred one, it was Northern Runes Radio segment that I found, and it was the only thing out there at the time when I was doing, you know, more research about this that was confirming my experience in context. But that's the thing. It's allowing the true core essence to ride this physical vehicle that we have to work with.
Okay, so I think that he and I were about to launch into another segment, so I thought I'd take a little break there. We probably will get through all of it today. Looks like that we're getting close to the end of it, so I think I'll try and fit it all into these two sessions here. Okay, so let me see if there are any questions. All right. All right, I'm just looking for the questions here. I'm not seeing anything here. Okay. All right. I don't see any questions here. Okay, good. So, I don't really have a lot to say. I think I pretty much said what I was wanting to say at that time. I think I said a lot, you know, and again, I'm sort of having your experience where I get to sit back and listen to myself and all that. And, you know, here's another thing about being a teacher, being a shaman, being a healer. You don't always know what's coming through you. And there are times when I've looked at stuff that I've written or I've listened to myself and I would go, I had no idea I knew that. And then sometimes I'm impressed, like, wow, that's deep, and I have to think about it. Which means that it's important to understand that there are other energies that want to work through you. And a true teacher understands that. And, you know, it's important, you know, for those, I'm saying this because I get the feeling there's a lot of teachers in training out there, or teachers listening to me, is that you've got to hold on to your humanity and, you know, understand what your limitations are as a person, you know, where you need to grow. I try to be as transparent as I can about my personal limitations, but at the same time, I also know that people sometimes have a really profound experience of me, and I don't try and take that away from them, because to do that is to sever the link between them and the ancestors that are working through me. And that's really what's important. And you have to have a face sometimes to connect it. You have to have a symbol. So that's all I am, is the symbol. But I learn from them with you. When energy and stuff comes out of me, you know, I may not even realize what I'm saying at the time. And then after I go back and listen to it, and then I have to go and apply it and learn it as well. So I'm right along there with you. We're in this thing together. So, okay, so I don't see, again, I'm not seeing any questions. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move on. Let's see if we can finish this. I'm going to go ahead and finish this, and again, if there's any questions, I'll take them. But we'll just let the interview play itself out. So again, I'm going to play the intro, which has everybody's links on it, and then we'll just go ahead and finish this out today. So hang on.
There is a lot of fear, you know, that does come up with individuals because of all the programming. But that's the thing. It's that people need to realize you're dealing with lies. These are lies holding you back, keeping you in that victim mentality, keeping you disempowered, keeping you in a place of being small, keeping you in a place of not expressing your authentic self. And that's a very hard thing to do. Even Bruce Lee said it was a very hard thing to do. Now, he's an individual, I think, that was able to tap into their true core essence, inspiring the world. You know what I'm saying? But how much more now? We are coming on to a. Sorry, man. I'm going to be editing, so it's fine. We're coming on to that trajectory now, and what you're talking about with the Alpha, would it be a boast to say that we are that?
It would not be a boast.
It would not be a boast, right?
It would not be a boast. It would be.
So we are the accumulation of the ancestors. The ancestors are speaking through us, to us, trying to remind us so that we can catch up the soul cycle, like I've been talking about. Exactly what you're saying, man. This is fucking beautiful, man. Okay.
Yeah, and for anybody listening, I'm gonna now watch your channel. I haven't watched your channel, so if people are thinking, we're on the same vibe because we've communicated, we haven't. If I'm saying something that he's vibing and saying the same thing, it's because we are both connecting to something that's giving us both that same truth. So people should know that we're not like we're sitting around all the time trying to figure out what's what and then regurgitating it. No,
right, yeah, that's the synchronicity of everything that's going on. What I term the higher force is bringing back everything into alignment, because the way it's revealed things to you with your experience, and the messages that you're getting are confirming things that have been revealed to me, vice versa now. So yeah, I didn't even know that you hadn't had the chance to be able to come on. I know you're busy. We're both really busy with everything, but I do invite you to come over.
Yeah,
and check out more of the content that I've presented. Specifically, one I really encourage you to check out is the Jedi Codes of the Nart Mongu. The whole concept of the Jedi is getting into the ancient magicians, the shamans. You know what I'm saying? This is my blood code lineage, and I've shared this as well in many segments. But my name Boza literally means keepers of the sacred tree. What is the sacred tree? It's the universal tree of life. This is getting into Yggdrasil now. This is getting into the spindle and the energy force. If we know how to wield it correctly, then we're going to be able to do things that we have not been capable of for hundreds of thousands of years. And it's not so that we could be in the positions of domination and control, but to be in the positions to be able to give others the opportunity to liberate themselves from this bullshit that is keeping them from their, not only their true selves, but their true potential. You know what I'm saying? So, in one way, another way of looking at it, getting into the concept of spirit fighting, like you're talking, this is very real for me, man. This is very real for a lot of other students that I have, having direct interface with malevolence. You know what I'm saying? You know, people talk about alien factions, and I talk about a lot of that on my channel, and I've completely and totally exposed it. People talk about disclosure, alien disclosure, and all this kind of stuff. But there are factions that are in the position of domination and control, and all they give a fuck about is riding in on the consciousness and genetics of mankind. They don't care about, you know, the liberation or the expansion or the evolution. You know what I'm saying? They're in those places because they themselves are not self-sustaining. They themselves are not willing to go through the process that we're talking about, healing and cleansing and purging, man. And so healing, empower the mind, and right action and manifestation. What are some things that you could share as far as what you've been able to discover on with your path work in context to all that, and how you see your life kind of unfolding from you know, share a little bit of where you were, maybe a little bit before you started really waking up, man, because we were both involved with Christianity. I was a youth pastor for 7 years, man. And it's ironic because I hear you say that and I'm like, oh my God, this guy's been, you know, through some of the same things that I've experienced. And even when I was fucking there, man, I knew it was fucking bullshit because I made connection to the real before I got involved. But the reason I got involved was because of programming, because I had that shit shoved down my fucking throat. Forgive me, mother, for saying this, but it was bullshit. But healing and the power of the mind, all is mind.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah, there's a lot of things, a lot of subjects in there. Also, I'll talk a little bit about where I came from. I grew up, typical WASP family. I had a mother who was a Baptist, and my dad was a scientist, and all that kind of stuff, and did the whole church thing. Yeah, and as a kid, I mean, I had experiences as a kid. I was born something like I don't know, a month and a half early or something like that, or I wasn't supposed to live, for more than a few hours, and so my mom prayed and said, if he lives, make him normal. And she said, of course she's using the God thing. She said, God said, he's mine. Hands off. Leave him alone. He's mine. So she said, okay. So she would always remind me of that throughout life. Whatever you're doing, the Lord told me to leave you alone. So, she would do all that. But, and I had weird experiences, and I interpreted it through the Christian filter. And I shared about one where, as a kid, I thought that Jesus didn't love me, and I dreamt that night, and I was yanked out of my body, and I was pulled up to this light. And this light surrounded me with the most intense orgasmic bliss that I still have yet to experience. And that experience was more real than anything I've ever experienced in the physical body. So it wasn't like it was kind of a dream. This feels like the dream. That was really real. And of course, when I came back, I won't get into all that, but I was put back into my body, and I came out of that, and I thought, oh, I saw Jesus. And for years, I would walk around saying that I saw Jesus, until I went through this change. And I, years ago, 20 years ago or so, I left Christianity. And then I would go, what about that time I saw Jesus? And then I went, wait a second. That light never once told me who or what it was. And now I am of the opinion that what I was experiencing was me. My true essence of who I was, in timeless perfection, because there wasn't any time. And so what you're talking about and what I try and talk about when I talk about being in alignment with my true self and following your soul desire, I'm talking about that light, that eternal me. So, you mentioned some interesting things about aliens, and, here's the thing about what I would call a demon. Whether you call it a thirst, or whether you call it a troll, or whether you call it a demon, or whatever, an alien, I don't care, and I have no problem with there being multiple kinds of different, sort of negative entities. They're not just in one category. But here's what happened when I used to do exorcisms. This is when I was, in my early 20s, and I was preaching on the street, Christian guy, and I did exorcism. And people would walk up to me. I'd be walking down the street, and people would walk up to me and say, "There's somebody inside of me, and I know you can help." And I'd roll my eyes, and I go, "Oh, here we go again." And then I do the whole thing of "in Jesus' name, come out." But the thing is that those entities would not leave until I could get that person who was possessed to confess that they had unresolved anger towards somebody that had harmed them. And once I could get them to say, "Yes, my uncle so-and-so raped me," or whatever the heck it was, because this is what happens. You cannot be affected by negative entities. You cannot be affected by them unless you have opened the door. And we could say, yes, well, they've been horribly abused and all that, and that cracked open their aura. Very true. But the universe and our spirit is constantly regenerating itself. There is no time. There's always the right now, and it's always creating itself every single moment. That means that every single moment you have the ability to make the decision to drop all of the negativity that you may be holding on to, all of your fears. You can drop it in a moment if you have the ability to, to connect to that. So what that means is that if somebody has been harmed, and we could get into how that happened and why, we won't get into that. But if, let's say, somebody gets their aura cracked open because somebody physically abused them. If they hold on to that memory and keep replaying it and telling themselves, "I'm a victim, I'm a victim, I'm a victim," then that is going to send out to other beings that are also running around telling themselves they are victims. They are looking for something to feed off of. So, if we talk about demons, demons are entities that are refusing to connect themselves to their own inner light. And so they are starving for energy. And so they go around looking for it. That's why lots of times you'll see ghosts hanging out around, power, electrical outlets, because they want the power. They want something that approximates spirit energy. So the point being is that when I would get those people to confess that they had anger towards somebody, a resentment, and that they had to forgive them, I have to say, you've got to forgive them or I can't help you. And so they would forgive, and then I could expel the demon. Until then, I couldn't do it. But then afterwards, I would sit them down and I would say, "Hey, listen, you have got to," back then I was different. And I would say, you got to go to church, or you got to go to counseling, or you got to whatever it was. But what I was saying is, you got to change the way you're thinking about yourself. Otherwise, it's going to come back. And here's what's important. None of these people are victims. It's that the pain of transformation is more painful than the pain of being abused by some outside entity. And that's why they choose it. They choose it because they are asking, they're sending out, whenever, this is important, anybody listening to me, this is very important. When you indulge in feeling victimized or limited, you are sending out a request to be disempowered so that you can stay distracted from your true self. If you remember, I said earlier when I had that dream, that orgasmic bliss that I was feeling, it was orgasmic and wonderful, but it was almost too much. So when you have something that intense and you're experiencing it in the physical realm, then it becomes actually frightening and painful, and you want something to distract you out of it. That's why people fill their lives with chaos. They fill their lives with dysfunctional relationships or whatever the hell it is. It's because they are afraid of their true selves.
Right.
So
they're avoiding the responsibility that they've been given coming into this reality field to unfold what you're talking about. And demons are an unconscious mental projection that we give, energy to, and then it latches onto us.
Yeah.
Entities and different factions, stuff like that. That's a bit, up more on a higher level, but it all runs in trajectory with what you're talking about, and not being willing to actually embrace the true essence of who you are. Yeah. That's what we've been conditioned to be most afraid of, because that is what these dark factions and this sorcerer priest class that is very fucking real, man. Yeah. Is the most afraid of. They don't care if we know about what they're doing. In fact, it actually reinforces the issue. What they don't want us to know is who we truly are, stepping into that, because once you do, you make the playing field even. You expel all of those quote unquote demons or whatever, and then you stand there in your sovereignty, and they have to respect you. They have to say, "Oh my God, we can't fuck with Thunder Wizard. We can't fuck with Sethikus Boza. Yeah. We can't fuck with other people that get it." And this is going out now even more. But it is all a state of mind. It is all about changing the way that you think. Yeah. And this is the first assignment that I give my students. I tell them, I say, you have to become the master of your thought and emotion. You have to begin to think things on purpose. You have to begin to feel into things on purpose. What do you actually want to experience? You know what I'm saying? Not like you just let the gears run and then like, oh my God, all this chaos is happening in their lives and they don't even know why. It's because they don't know who they are. They're completely cut off, completely disassociated, and are playing, on that victim mentality. So why do you think though? And I think this is something to touch upon as well. Why do you think that individuals are afraid of who they truly are, even past the programming and stuff like that? What do you think it might really be that is the cause point for that, man?
Well, again, we're talking about things we haven't experienced yet completely. And so these are frightening to us, and they're more frightening than anything else. Again, it's easy, the devil, right? Well, I understand that, so I can do that. But what you're talking about, I don't know what will happen. But if we go back to whether we're talking about physics or whether we're talking about ancient mythology, we're always talking about this. The beginning state is this state of, what our ancestors called Gnungagap, the yawning chasm. So we think of it and we go, oh, it's this emptiness where there's nothing there. It's not that there's nothing there, it's that it hasn't been manifested into anything yet. So it's pure power that has no manifestation. So whenever we evolve, we go into that state to a degree. And it doesn't matter what tradition we're looking at, they will talk about how, the universe comes into being and then destroys itself and comes into being at a higher level. And so that state in between where there's nothing there, we think of that as death because we don't know what will be. We don't know what that is. And we don't want to die. So it scares us. And it is painful. When you've gone through a shamanic initiation, which I know you have, that's the fear that you're feeling, because you really are. Your limitations of who you think you are, your ego, is being dismantled. And when we're talking about spirit fighting, there's the kind of what I talked about. That is what I would consider to be mundane spirit fighting. But there's much higher levels of spirit fighting, which is when you seek to go into that state of Gnungagap. And you seek, like Odin did, to die to yourself and, be destroyed. I mean, all that symbolism of he hung on there for 9 days and 9 nights, I think that represents he destroyed himself on the 9 levels of his being, which are in the Yggdrasil, your higher self, your lower self, your middle self, your super conscious, your unconscious, you know, your identity, your connection to others, you know, we have all these 9 levels. He went through that and dismantled all of that, and then allowed himself to be put back together on a higher level. I talked about in the spirit fighting tradition, one of the first levels is that you die and resurrect yourself. But the death isn't like I'm going to sit there and die. It's that you do these certain practices that the energy becomes so intense that you actually die, you know, and then what happens is you come back into your body and you awaken. And then there's higher levels of that I've only heard about, which whether it's true or not, I don't know, but the symbolism is true. So when you do that, when you focus on going there to that place of emptiness, and you know that getting there means you're going to be torn apart on all different levels, those lower entities can't be anywhere near you. They take off running. I'll give you an experience when I was training for like 4 hours a day. I mean, I was just on this, I was like a zombie. I was on this other level. People didn't know what to do with me, but all kinds of weird stuff happened. But I walked into a yoga class, and there was a woman there that I knew, and she was lying on the floor, and she got up like somebody had lifted her up like a marionette. She looked over at me and then just walked out of the room. You know, it wasn't like her. I could tell somebody was like just taking her out of the room. And what was happening is that I had walked in and I started doing, which now I know not to do. I was doing some of the postures and movements for the spirit fighting just to warm up. And that's what made her do that. And she said, "What did you do?" And I said, "I was just warming up." She said, "Whatever the hell it was, it went right through me. And then I just had to get up and leave." And I found out later that she had a ghost in her house that she had been trying to connect with. And so she had been bringing her down to some lower entity, connecting with that. So the point is that when you go to that place, whatever the practice is, and you start to go there, those negative entities they just take off. They don't want to be anywhere near you.
Right. And this gets into what I practice when I talk about drawing the circle of the magician, going into the fulcrum and working with the life force energy, the energy force itself. The law of vibrational correspondence is something that people need to understand. Things that are not on the same vibrational correspondence, the energies are going to repel. And this is how it works as far as this spiritual war that's going on. They're looking for any hook in that they can. But when you do these sorts of things, when you do the practices that Michael does, that myself does, and even others that understand the shamanic traditions of the ancestors, you reach a point where you can't be fucked with at all. Yeah. And that's the goal if we are going to evolve beyond the systems of domination and control, manipulation, and everything, keeping us back from our true self, keeping us back from our true potential. It's the potentials now that are before us, unlike any other time, if we catch it and we actually come into this and become the masters of ourselves. Because that's the whole goal, getting into the higher occult sciences with what I personally practice, is becoming the master of yourself. It's I don't know if you work with the tarot, but it's the hermit card in the tarot. The hermit is the master. He's the one that has climbed the mountain, been through the process of initiation, gone through all the trials, faced all the things that he needs to do to reach that summit of selfhood, that summit of self-mastery. Okay? And so many people out there, Michael, are dealing with direct interface. A lot of the dark projects that are going on, people talk about, secret space program, super soldiers, stuff like that. People in my network specifically. And so many of them have no idea what they're missing out on because they and it's like, it's almost like a social club. Even it's like, people that glorify being targeted. It's like, why the fuck would you glorify being targeted? Like, you're special because you're being targeted, but you don't even know why you're being targeted. And the reason that we're being targeted is not just them. It's not just some special little group. It's the whole entire human race that's been targeted.
Yeah.
Because they are literally feeding off our life force energy. That's why we physically die. When in the beginning, before all this kind of stuff happened, going back to the Alpha and what you were talking about, they didn't even realize that they were physical. It was only until certain things unfolded, and then this whole reality field and universe was thrown onto the inverse. Yep. That we realized that we were limited compared to what we once were. Because I remember, man, I remember being able to take my physicality with me. I've had dreams of traveling the stars, and I've seen the universal tree, man. What the fuck is going? It's like, is this? And this is barely, and see, this is barely scratching the surface of what we've been cut off from. But now we're coming into that time, the unfoldment of the blood codes, not just the blood codes with the ancestors, but the soul code genetics, getting into cosmic consciousness, the cosmic stargates that are within us to access as well. Because it's not just a physical lineage that we have access to. This is cosmic. This is beyond even time and space. But at the same time, it's all meant to manifest here again in trajectory so that we can get back on that. And so becoming what our ancestors termed as the Berserkers and the Ulfanar. This is something else I wanted to ask you about and get into and get your take.
Okay, so yeah, we're about to, as you can see, he's about to ask about the Berserkers and those kinds of things, which, to be honest, I haven't thought a lot about. You know, I have a cursory knowledge of it, and I think he has a deeper knowledge about that than I do. So we'll play that out. This is a long one tonight, but, you know, we're almost done. There's like a half hour left on it, so I'll go ahead and finish it out instead of dragging it out into multiple things. But I want to see if there are any questions. I know it's already been 2 hours, so you won't hurt my feelings if you've gone offline, because people have lives. So, all right, let me see here if there's any questions that I missed. All right, so I'm not seeing any questions here. John Jones' question, I forgot the name, but someone pretty tuned in a good way reckons just one astral shag can take up to 30 years of a person's lifetime. I don't know what an astral shag is, so I can't have an opinion because I don't know what that is. Are you okay? Looking at again for the questions. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and finish things off with this interview. And I don't remember what we said. I don't remember. I think I got pretty passionate about something, but okay, nope. Here's a question. All right. So a question, Rousseau Van Royen question, what must I do if I have had intense interface with what? I don't know what that is. Intense interface, but was told that I am too immature to be able to continue with them. I need to know more about what you're talking about. So sorry, I can't answer that question. I need more. Continued, John Jones. Sex. Astral sex takes 30 years off of your life. You know, why would you do that? I've never had that happen. You know, those are called succubi, incubi and succubi. Why would you have sex with a... I don't know. I've never done that. I can imagine that would take a lot of energy out of you. But anyway, I don't have any experience with that. I wouldn't recommend it. You know, anything that takes energy out of you, I wouldn't do. You know, when you're doing that with another human being, there's a whole other thing. Yeah, it can take your energy out, but your partner gives it back to you and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I don't want to talk about stuff that I don't know anything about. So, okay, I don't see any other questions here, so I'm going to go ahead and finish off again, let's see, how much time do we have left in this? I don't remember, but I think we're getting pretty close to the end. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish that. So let's get on with the rest of this interview.
What the Berserkers were. Who were the Berserkers? Who were the Ulfanar, man? Odin's elite. I don't like that word elite. But Odin's special forces. Yeah. Because I feel that personally, I'm a part of that, even being in connection with Odin himself, having come to me, having come to you. So if you could touch on that, man, that'd be awesome, man.
Yeah, that's a great topic. What I'll say again, I'll share what I understand, not having, been able to go back and know what the Berserkers went through to achieve whatever they achieved. It's going to sound like I'm going off topic, but I'll bring it back. A while back, probably 10 years ago or so, I came across some information about what Druids went through. They went through a 20-year training. They went through a 20-year training, and they went and learned specific things. And I found out after the fact, when I looked over my life, that I had actually been led, by whatever, to go through that. And I'd learned all those things. One of the things I learned how to do was to act. Now, I wasn't I was your method actor type, which meant I would go into seclusion and I would allow myself to recreate my identity to be whoever it was I was going to be. And it got so intense sometimes, I did a film about serial killers, and I went there, and I'll never do that again. And I ended up channeling a guy and writing about a guy who was a serial killer in prison and all that. And I didn't know until after I did it and looked at it that I was actually channeling this guy. So I'm not here to say that people should be channeling serial killers. What I'm saying is that we have this ability, when we choose to believe that we have the ability to change our lower self, we can create an entire different person. If we use that power to tap into the power of the spirit wolf or the spirit bear, for instance, Ozzy Osbourne, I'm sure his last name, Osbjorn, which means spirit bear, I'm willing to bet that he is descended from a berserker. Because, last names are what you did. They go, oh yeah, so-and-so, the spirit bear. So what they actually went through to achieve that, I can't say, because I don't have access to that. But what I do believe is that it really does come down to what you are willing to accept and believe about yourself. And if we're talking about using this, if we're talking about the Berserkers as being more than just people who went crazy to go into battle and fight with the power of the bear, if we're talking about Berserkers as being people who had the ability to transform themselves into something that we would consider to be a divine whatever it was. What I've come to experience is that it all comes down to, first of all, being willing to know what your limitations are that you have imposed upon yourself. So I'm going to go a little further from what you're talking about, and some people may not like it. I don't care what negative force out there, if we're talking about aliens, demons, whomever, that have been absolutely controlling our minds and programming us. Here's what I'm going to say. We created them. Anybody listening to me right now, whatever, if you're talking about alien, you created them. And you created them for one reason. And that one reason is that you weren't ready to go into the infinite. So you created something out there, whether real or imagined, I don't care. It has the same power. It will have the ability to limit you. And now you have an excuse to stay limited. So if you want to spend your whole life proving the shadow government or the aliens, or I don't care who it is, the archons, you know, I make fun of that, and people hate it when I start making fun of the archons, because they can't do anything to you unless you let them. And more importantly, you created them. If there is an army of archons standing there preventing you from going to the next level, it's because you projected them out into the universe because you were afraid to go through that death, you know, the horrific death of being torn to pieces in Gununga Gap, and then put yourself back together. And the only reason you're afraid is because you haven't been there and you don't know what it feels like, at least in this lifetime. You've probably been there, but you don't remember it up here. So, you know, when it comes to, you know, here's one thing I've experienced about magic. I still do ritual. You know, I shared with you, I gave you a ritual out of, you know, your chart, and I looked at your chart, and I do that for people. But I do that when I feel as though I'm not able to just simply think something into manifestation. So I want to get to the point where I don't need the rituals. I don't need to face a certain direction. I don't need to chant this. I don't need to do that. Until that day comes, I'm going to keep using them. And so I use them as tools, but that's all they are. They're just tools to tap me into that science that already exists. But, you know, my life partner who has, you know, moved on, who's transformed. And by the way, I just want to say something interesting has happened. I live now at the beach, and it's, you know, we have these amazing sunsets now, especially when it gets like we get a heat wave. And I'll go, and now I'm going down on the edge of the shore, and I'm watching the sun go down and this amazing sky and stars and moon. And I'm talking to her. And I didn't know that would happen. She's now become the sunset and the stars. She's become a goddess. I'm worshiping her now. You know, and I think that is because she's no longer in her self-imposed limitation of whatever, you know, Lisa. She's now moved past that. And it's something I didn't see would happen. I thought I was going to move to a place where I would sort of forget about her. You know, she's dead and moved on. But now she's everywhere. And so even if I get married again, guess what? I'm going to be worshiping my ex-fiance, but we'll still be married. You know what I mean? And so what you're talking about is what I'm seeing where she is. That's what she is. And I don't even care if she's back in a body somewhere, or if she's exploring another realm of the underworld, or whatever her soul is going through. The essence of who she is that when I look out into the moon and that amazing sunset, when the sun sinks down below the ocean and it's an amazing thing. And that's her. It's the first thing that pops into my mind is that's her. Right. And so what you're telling me is that that's what we can become. So what I want to do, and with the techniques that I'm creating about working with the three selves, is to get to the point where I can say, I want this to happen, and it happens. And she was the person that showed me that I was already doing that. She said, you're not human. I'd say, what do you mean I'm not human? She'd say, you have this ability to just say something's going to happen, and then it happens. And I go, I do? And she says, yeah, you remember 2 weeks ago we sat there and you said this? And I realized it was something that I wanted, and I just blurted it out loud that there was something that I wanted to change. And I said, you know what, I don't want to have this happen anymore. I want this to happen. And I forgot about it. And she said, it was impossible for that to happen. And now 2 weeks later, it's happened. She was the one that showed me that I was learning how to do that. And that's where I want to go, to answer your question. I don't know if I answered your question, but all of these tools are designed to get me to that place where I can just simply intend my reality without having to go through any other steps.
Right. And that is one of the major secrets of everything. Once people realize that the heavens above are within, once we realize that all is within, we will come to the point of being able to do that ritual from within. And see, and this is how I personally operate. It's not to say that I don't do ritual myself, but everything in ceremony is there to actualize the mind. And this is what a lot of ceremonial magicians don't understand, because they're still focused on the outward and they don't realize that all is within. Yeah. And even when I draw the circle, I use my imagination, the imagination, imagination. When you tap into that and you're able to wield it correctly, nothing is impossible. And then getting into evocation, we create what we speak. That's why she was freaking out. Like you said this 2 weeks ago, and then it manifests. That is very powerful, man. And getting back to, I'll say the state of consciousness that we once held in the original universe. In the original universe, if you had a thought, if you had a feeling about something, it would instantly manifest. And see, this is why people aren't ready for that yet. That's why we live in a less progressive universe. There are many universes, but this reality field, this universe is here, and we are here in the position to either be graduates, or we came in to assist that process for other people, which I think you have, I think I have, and other people as well. It's just that we have to, it's like when you incarnate, you take a risk of getting a memory wipe, and then you got to go through the whole process again. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. To learn to remember what you already know, get back on track, and then take it to the whole other fucking level. And that's what I see going on. So in context of what you're saying, that's beautiful, man, because that is the essence of a true magician. He doesn't need all this stuff. He can access it from within himself. Knows how to evoke. And evocation, getting into Galder, man, that's the evocation, right? Yeah. That's the evocation part. When you declare something, if you speak something, people are like, they're like, oh, I'm no good, or it's like, fuck, you're like bringing that shit on yourself, man. And in the end, nobody else is going to have anything to blame except themselves. Yep. But if people hear what we are saying in this segment, maybe they'll be able to catch it, and maybe they'll be able to see past the limitations that they have put upon themselves, and then unconsciously project in context to the archons and these factions and stuff like that. Because listen, man, I'm not saying that they're not real, but I 100% agree with what you have said in context to how it actually works. Because once you reach that level, they cannot fuck with you, man. In fact, they have to respect you. And like I said, and then they have to be like, we can't fuck with Thunder Wizard. We can't fuck with Sethikus Boza. Because if we do, we're going to get our asses handed to us, because they're the Ulfanar. They are the Berserker. And so when that saved state starts to boil, and you feel all this like self-doubt coming on you, man, that's when that spirit rises up. Exactly. And I remember you talking about being able to literally like almost even physically take these things out, man, because they want to manifest physically. Yeah. And you're talking about when you did the Ragnarok video that I uploaded, the Jormonger, how do you say it? Jormonger, or how do you say it? Jormonger, how do you say it?
Jormungandr?
Jormungandr, right. I just say it right. I want to make sure, man, because I'm saying Jormonger, Jormonger. How do you say it? Say it one more time.
Jormungandr.
Jormungandr is that astral barrier that has been set in place to limit us, to keep us locked down. But it's this artificial intelligence, man. It's not the true intelligence of the true core essence of who we are. Getting into Thunar, like you're talking about, the positive and negative charge of the energy force, right? Thor's hammer, what I'm wearing, what you're wearing, is the symbol of what that is, man. And it's so unbelievably powerful once you can actually connect to it beyond the symbolism. See, because everything in study, when it came to the ancient wisdom councils, symbolism, gods and goddesses were all there for study and meditation so that we could know ourselves, man, so that we could know how we operate. You know what I'm saying? And this is something that I learned a long time ago in studying research. But it's reached that point now for me personally where I'm able to do that ritual from within. And it hasn't been easy. And I got a lot of magicians pissed off at me, man, because I'm calling out their Kabbalah bullshit. and their you know, angelic hierarchies and just all this kind of stuff, man. And it's and I have to read something to you. Hold on. I'm gonna edit this. Hold on. I gotta read something. This is very important for people to understand. All right. And this is coming from some of the higher occult sciences material that I personally practice. And and it's not to say that people won't have interface with spirits, because you will, especially when you go through the stages of initiation. But you never ever give your power away. Even when Odin came to me, it wasn't like he wanted me to bow down and sacrifice and worship him. He wanted to you know, sit with me and sup with me, man. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And have that, you know, camaraderie and he told me a lot of what I already do know, but even more I'm still like processing, man. I can't even like fully express that. But this is where it got inverted. This is what the black magicians did, even even getting into the tradition of our ancestors, man. There were the dark ones as well that took these principles and concepts and inverted them. Yeah. Right. And this is what it said. This is what it says in the material. It says invocation is done by the use of symbols, energy, and incantations to bridge the consciousness of the performer with the consciousness of the receiver. So the performer is the one doing the ritual. The receiver is the spirit or the entity, right? From this link, it is possible to transfer genetics and consciousness from one timeline to another. The performer of the invocation is then linked to the receiving consciousness, and from there, my friend, becomes the host of the genetics and consciousness of the receiver, integrating these into the energy system of the performer. And this is how these factions are tricking people, because they've taken the ancient concepts, they've taken it, even the symbolism of the gods and goddesses and thrown it on the inverse. Not and what people, I'm stumbling over my words, man. What people don't realize is that these are already within us to work with. You don't need to do an invocation to make connection. It's about that Galder. It's about that evocation and realizing that you are already connected within your true core essence, getting in the blood codes, getting in the soul codes. It's already there. It's not anything outside of you. But this is what I see happening with a lot of people that get into magic, they get into ceremony, and then they end up getting taken over. It's fucking classic, man. Yeah. And so Odin being obsessed with self-awareness. This is what I've learned to remember in context to magic, to manifestation. What you say, what you speak is what you create. We create what we speak, right? And so becoming the master of your thought and emotion, becoming, you know, the master of your mechanics and knowing how you work, realizing, yes, the heavens above are within you and you can travel the stars at will if you want. Physically, like the Alpha, we're not quite there yet, but it's like you said, man, it's that call. It's that come back to yourself, come back in alignment with what is actually real. And it is a death, man. It's very painful, and I'm probably still going to be going through a lot more, you know, initiations. I mean, because it's not just like one time you go through the chemical process.
Right. Yeah, it's a continual process.
Yeah. But the blackening is the first stage where you go into that scary, terrifying place. And if people aren't willing to go there, they're literally going to be kept in a perpetual spiritual kindergarten, man. And that's where they want to keep us. But at the same time, it's not enough to point the finger at the Illuminati or the aliens or whatever. No, it's you doing it to you, consenting, giving your power away to this alien or this fucking archon or the government or whatever. And it's interesting, but the word government literally means mind control.
Yeah.
Govern means the government is mind.
Yeah.
Government, mind control. Hello, people. Why aren't you governing your own thoughts? Why aren't you governing your own emotions? Why aren't you coming into that, place of being truly empowered and encouraged and inspired? And see, and this is what me and Michael are trying to do. This is what I'm definitely picking up on with your energy, and is why I wanted you to come on, man, and do this with me, because I really respect what you're doing and the work that you are doing. It's a great work, man. And you're doing things in context to the ancient traditions of our ancestors, unlike anybody else out there, as far as I'm concerned. Not to say that there aren't other people, like you were saying, that don't know more, but you've taken the time to really create a platform for people to be inspired and want to get into this even more. And it has been that way even with myself, man. So I just want to thank you for that. And yeah, I don't know how much longer you want to talk, man, but
yeah, I think we covered a lot. You and I could probably go on for hours and hours, but my experience is that people have to absorb what we've said. But I'll say one last thing. You mentioned something which I absolutely agree with, which is when you own who you are and you're in that space of Odin and you're really practicing that, not only can they not touch you, but in lots of times they won't even see you. They will walk right past you to the person behind you on either side of you, and they won't even know you're there.
You know what's interesting? Right. You know what's interesting about my kind, about our kind? We have the ability to cloak ourselves.
Yeah.
They can't see us, man. They don't see us coming. They don't even see this segment coming, man.
Yeah.
I have a few more things coming out. I have a few more things coming out that are in trajectory with this as well, but they don't see us coming, man, because we have that ability.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And this, you were talking about the Druids earlier. I have very strong connections to Ireland and the Druids, and you're talking about a 20-year initiation.
Yeah.
I feel I've been through that, man. That exactly what you're talking about, leading up to the present moment. Okay, what now? What's going to unfold from here? But yes, you reach that point. They can't fuck with you, man. They got to respect you, and they go, oh, this is a worthy player that is here, that knows how things work, that knows what the fuck is going on. And so I feel that this is going to go out very, very well, man. And if the last part of this, of course, I'm going to be editing on my end. I'm going to send you the raw, copy. You can do whatever you want with it. But I want to have you share how people can get a hold of you, your websites and all that kind of stuff. So next, real quick, Mike,
Okay, so I already do that anyway. Every chance I get, I give you guys how to connect with me. So I'll let the interview end there, because that's pretty much where it ended. So I know it was a long stuff, but this will be archived, so you can go back and watch it over and over again. I will say this: obviously, if you my most popular service is the Vedic astrologies. Go to astrology.thunderwizard.com. The most powerful teaching I can give you is the Celestial Qigong, qigong.thunderwizard.com. You have also the YouTube channel itself. So, listen, don't be lazy, guys. He's talking about how we're being controlled. Even YouTube is trying to control how you think by, trying to lead you from one video to the next. And there's so few people, will come to, so few people take the time to actually look into my channel to see what's there. And people will email me and say, do you have a video about such and such? And I can tell either they haven't put the time into it or they don't know how to go to somebody's channel and, type into, there's 2 ways to search, by the way. You can search at the top, which will take you to all of the YouTube videos, or, when you get to somebody's channel, there's a little magnifying glass. If you click on that and type in whatever you want, you'll see what will come up in my videos. So search my videos, search my channel, and there'll probably be something there, binge watch it. Take control. Don't let YouTube tell you what to watch next. Take control and decide what you want to, because if you do that, there's just almost unlimited amounts of stuff in there. So that's there for you. That is free. If anybody complaining about they can't afford this, they can't afford that, there is no price that can be put on the knowledge in these videos that I put out there for you. There's no price for it. So nobody can accuse me of not giving a complete system out there for free. So the best way to support me, and also a way to learn the advanced shamanism, is to go on to thunderwizard.com and sign up as an apprentice at the $25 level. That means that every month, you'll be paying $25, but I'm adding videos every week, an hour-long video, and some of them I get into. I teach you in depth from the beginning how to use the thunder wheel here. I teach you about all the different aspects of the rune wheel, and of course that goes in context with the books. So go to michaelwilliamdenney.com and get the books for each of these. You want to learn runes? There's 3 books on runes. There's 3 videos or more on runes, and there's Celestial Qigong, and there's medicine wheel Qigong, which is postures, so there's a huge amount of information available to you, which if you use in context with the $25 level of apprenticeship, there's really no end to what you can do. It's already there, but you have to put the energy into it. You have to actually try. I know it's confusing, but part of learning is being self-motivated and being self-regulated. And the way you do that is just listen and say, what is it that I want to learn next? And then don't jump from one thing to the next. Don't jump from one teacher to the next. Pick one thing and stick with it and learn it. So I would love to see a minimum of 250 initiate subscribers, people who are just at the $25 level. I only have so much time, so that's why eventually I'm going to have to start creating some kind of training program, some teacher training program, so that people who need to interact directly with a teacher will have somebody to work with. So I'm still playing around with that, so meditate on that, and any suggestions and questions you have about that will help me as well. So I don't know if there's anybody left. We got 31 people still on here, so I'll check and see if there are any questions. There's a lot of information, and you won't hurt my feelings if you need to go and do other things. That's fine, but let's see. I think this is where I'm at now. All right, so I'm looking for the questions. I don't see any questions here. John Jones, somebody put a message that's held in review. It's probably because there's something on there. So, I don't know if there's a link or something, but, I've got it set up so it automatically tries to get rid of spam. So if it's not spam, I'm sorry. Let's see. Blaxicon in Taiwan says, have you noticed a polarity of consciousness the more you try to better yourself? It's a big question. I don't really know what that means. You'd have to be more specific. We always live in a polarity of consciousness. You always have opposing thoughts going in your unconscious mind all the time. Love and hate all the time. You're wanting to love somebody and kill them all at the same time within you. So there's always a polarity of consciousness within you. Maybe what you're talking about is the more that you do spiritual work, the more conscious you become more aware of the polarity that's within you. Okay, so let's see. Looking again for the questions. I'm not seeing anything here. Questions. I'm not seeing any. All right, we're coming to the end here. I don't see any more questions. Okay, great. So I'm going to go ahead and end it here. If you got a last minute question, I'll go ahead and give you some time to do that. See if there's any last minute things I want to say. No, we said a lot in this interview. You know, it was a lot of stuff. So I recommend coming back and watching it again from the beginning. And anyway, so that's it, my friends. I thank you so much for the opportunity of allowing me to be a part of your empowerment, and be aware that you are also a part of mine. Thanks again to everybody who has sent me all the love and the positive things. Obviously, I'm feeling much better than I was. That was a very challenging time. You know, listen, I'm still not over it, obviously. And I've got some physical challenges. I've injured myself, and I'm coming out of that, and it's kind of limiting my surfing ability, which is making me cranky. But I'm just going to have to find other ways to get out in the water, and until I get my body completely healed. So I don't have anything else to say, so I'm going to go ahead and end it now. Just again, just be aware that I guess what's coming to me is to be patient with yourself. You know, Sethikus and I were talking about things that can sound kind of unreachable and out of the realm. You know, so don't give up. Anything that we're talking about, know that we are also striving for that as well. Whatever we have achieved is, you know, is possible. You know, and I had this experience when I first trained with my spirit fighting teacher. And I came in there, you know, I was a weightlifter, and I had, you know, trained in other kinds of, you know, hard martial arts and all that. And here was this little guy, this little Japanese guy, who I could have picked up and tossed across the room if I wanted to. And he just barely tapped me. I talk about this in, I think, one of the Sleipnir books. I talk about my experience with spirit fighting. Awakening Sleipnir, I talk about it. But he just barely tapped me, and it felt like this bomb go off inside of me. And he did it 3 times because I have a good poker face, and each time he built up the energy. I wanted to run out of that room screaming. By the end of that first class, I knew that there was nothing I could do to that little guy. Just like Sethikus was saying. It wouldn't have mattered how much strength or whatever I put at him. He would have chopped me into pieces. And you know, been able to not only physically hurt me, but my spirit, you know, was getting affected as well. But what ended up happening, which I found, is I didn't realize I had this ability, and I want you to know that you have this ability, whether you realize it or not, is that I looked at him and I said, he's a human and I'm a human. If he can do it, I can do it. And so even though it was so far away from what I was capable of, I knew that if I just went through and did what he did, I'd be able to do what he was doing too. So that's the same what I'm telling you as well, is that, you know, whatever we're talking about or whatever I share about or whatever the heck it is, if it sounds like it's too much for you, and sometimes just little things, you know, like, you know, somebody in there said he's got to, you know, he's got to get rid of his bong, because I'm talking about, you know, getting, you know, going past power plants and being able to create that energy within yourself, and even far more than that. And that may, you know, just doing that, you know, stopping a habit may feel like it's just more than you can do. Just know that if I can do it, trust me, if I can do it, you can do it. And, you know, that's why it's good for us to help each other, and that's why it's good to have a mentor and have a teacher, somebody who can remind you of that. So I'm going to end with that. I'll check one last time if there's any questions of any value here. Nope, I'm not seeing anything, so I'm going to let you guys go. Thanks again. I wish you all the best. Thanks again for all of your love and support. I still need it. And we will talk again very soon. So may the power of the ancestors connect you to your infinity.